The following program is brought to you by PodcastOne Sportsnet.
The Steve Austin Show Unleashed podcast is sponsored in part this week by DDP Yoga. You already know what WWE Hall of Famer Diamond Dallas Page and DDP Yoga has done to help thousands of people all over the world, but now Dallas has done it again. DDP Yoga has added DDPY Rebuild. It's a new variation of the traditional DDPY program catered toward those aged 55 plus and those with physical limitations and extremely limited mobility. The DDPY Rebuild workouts will take you from the bed to the chair and eventually to standing upright with the support of a chair. The DDPY Rebuild program is the perfect holiday gift for your parents, grandparents, or even your great-grandparents. So head over to ddpyoga.com/rebuild and learn more and pre-order the DDPY Rebuild program. Also, DDPY is having their biggest Black Friday sale ever. 30% off all DVDs, app memberships, and apparel on ddpyoga.com. You heard it right. 30% off. They've never had a sale like this before. There's no better time to take advantage of the DDPY program. DDP Yoga can work for all ages, weights, and fitness levels. It provides a kick-ass cardio workout with minimal joint impact. It'll have you on your way to not only changing your life, but owning your life. Also, Dallas will be appearing December 8th through 10th at the Steel City Con in Monroeville, Pennsylvania. Dallas will be there signing autographs, taking pictures, and talking to the fans. For more information, go to www.diamonddallaspage.com and click on the Appearances tab to get all the info.
The following program is a PodcastOne.com production. He started in a small town in Texas. Worked his ass off to become one of the most famous wrestlers of all time.
We're going to take care of business tonight, and that's the bottom line.
And now he's dominating the world of on-demand audio. And he's doing it for the working man.
This is a damn good outlet for me to spew the bullshit off my brain.
Yeah! This is Steve Austin Unleashed.
All right, everybody, welcome to Steve Austin Show. I am coming to you from the mean streets of Los Angeles, California today. Sitting over here at 317 Gilbert Street with a microphone in my hand, a laptop computer on this pillow in front of me, and my Zoom H4n recorder. Son of a bitch. God damn, did you see the last episode of Broken Skull Challenge? Man, them women came out there and kicked ass. God damn, that was a good episode. Son of a bitch, I was so proud of them damn women. They gave every single thing they had. And God dang it, man. Megan, I felt so bad she messed up her knee. Couldn't get a chance to run that skull buster. You talk about an interesting story, an interesting day at the office. Man, that young lady, she's 22 years old, came out there and in that first round just started kicking ass, and that was such a close battle going up the summit. What a day that was. God dang. I hope you got your DVR set on CMT for Tuesdays, 10/9 Central. There's just been some epic shit going on, and I couldn't have been more proud of the women this past Tuesday. And, you know, hell, last Tuesday when Zach took that big tumble off of the rope burn at the end of that obstacle course, I missed that episode because we were on our way down to South Texas to spend Thanksgiving with my parents. So I couldn't watch it. I couldn't live tweet it. I couldn't do anything. I didn't even know which episode it was. I just knew Zach's episode was coming up. And God dang, man, them guys, my wife and I rewatched that episode the other day right before we watched the women and got a chance to see that episode. And, man, that fucking episode, I told you people, this show is crazy this year. And God damn, Zach, all that muscle mass. You talk about a real tough guy, real smart guy. Very articulate, just well-spoken, and his thinking process, the way he goes about processing information, and then employing his physical strategy and his mental acumen and how strong-minded he is. Man, what a champion. He came out there, and I tell you what, I guess looking back at all the Broken Skull challenges, this is 5 years' worth. I guess Zach was probably the biggest guy to run that course. Well, I think we had a heavyweight before him run it, but a lot of those heavyweights don't really have a chance because of so much muscle. Holy shit, when Zach come running down that goddamn backbreaker with that log on his back, damn near looked like a toothpick. And he started going through that course, and he was kicking ass. Here's a guy, man, I forgot what they said his official weight was, but he was very lean. So he was leaner than that other big guy that ran it before him a couple of years back. I really thought he had a great chance of beating Hunter's time if he could just keep going. I just knew that his body was going to be using a lot of oxygen in the process because he had so much muscle on him. And the guy just trains his ass off. He's just a beast in the gym and is on top of his nutrition, and he's just his mindset is the kind of mindset that you need out there. So anyway, going through this thing, man, he blasted up Heartbreak Hill like a motherfucker. Just like Hunter said, we've never seen anybody blast up a hill like he did, and he just left it all out there. And all of a sudden, man, he comes down from Heartbreak Hill, and you can see his system starting to go south on him right there, in my opinion. He was crushing it, and he crushed Heartbreak Hill so quickly, so fast, in such commanding fashion. I think he sapped himself. Coming down, you can see those legs starting to give a little bit. He got on those ribs, the rib cage, started flipping those guys over. Just a slight hesitation, that rope burn, and then up he went. Had the legs employed, pulling in harmony with his arms and upper body, had that rope grapevine between his feet to push up, using all the proper form and technique because he's no stranger to rope climbing. And then, man, all of a sudden, he was about 2 feet from ringing that bell. He needed to climb 2 more feet before he could reach that bell, and he just froze. And that was that come to Jesus meeting his body had with his mind, that had with his system, and he just hung up there for a second. And sometimes you'll watch an athlete and you think, okay, this is the rest phase. They're recouping a little bit. They're going to just try to strategize, regain a little bit of composure, a little bit of wind, a little bit of, get some of that lactic acid out of your muscle and make one more grab or go for it. And it seems like that was what Zach was thinking, but his body just pretty much, it was a Roberto Duran. It was no mas. That was it. And he hung on, and he kind of straightened those arms up. And I didn't know what was going to happen. Looked like he was trying to make, a couple of moves to start slowly lowering himself. And that's when the bottom fell out. And that big son of a gun came crashing down, and the earth was in his way, and it was a thud, and it was a sickening thud. And he hit the damn top of the earth from being 25 feet in the air. And I will say this, if there is a way to land on a fall from the rope burn, and we got sand down there, and it's pretty... it's not a soft landing. It's just like a wrestling mat. It ain't, it ain't no cushion. It ain't no trampoline. That's planet Earth he landed on. But the good thing about his fall was that it was a flat back landing. Now, don't get me wrong, he's still got to jar that neck a little bit. But that big tough son of a gun, you could just hear all the wind go out of his body as he hit. And I just turned away. I was like, oh, fuck, that was bad. I flinched. It was like, motherfucker, medic. Here comes the medic. I'm so thankful to all the wonderful medics, Cynthia and the other gals out there, for always being there when we need them. And then here comes the ambulance, fire truck, everybody stabilized his neck, and they lowered him up, took him off, went through all the precautions that you go through on something like that. And I tell you what, I think I'll see Zach again. You talk about an impressive guy. I'm glad he's okay, but this season, I'm telling you, you got to set your DVR for the last 3 episodes. I'm giving some second chances coming up here for the guys, for the gals, and then, that 3rd episode I can't even talk about. So check it out, set your DVRs. I don't mean to rant and rave and take up so much time on the opening, but that's how impressed I was with the women this week and the men from last week that I didn't get a chance to see because I was on the road. But son of a bitch, they put on a goddamn show, and they came out there and they gave it their all. And that is what the Broken Skull Challenge is all about. Who knows? I'm talking about doing season 6 out there when I'm looking at these episodes. You know, you always do an episode or you always do a season and you hope you get another season out of it. Well, we hope we get a season 6 out of it and then we continue. And then as I was watching Corinna, she showed up. Megan was physically unable to perform on the Skullbuster. So she went walking off into the sunset. Class act and a game competitor and a badass. Corinna, my returning champion, has earned the right to come back and take on the Skullbuster in season 6. And what a class act she is. And it was a pleasure to watch her compete and to watch someone go through that Skullbuster and unseat my returning champion, Cassidy, in such a dominant fashion is amazing, because Cassidy was just a flat-out amazing athlete, and she helped put us on the map with her performance and all the dues she'd paid. So, swig of protein to both of them. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Hey, man, I'm answering your questions here on the podcast today. I always read my emails. I pull a few questions aside. Hopefully I haven't answered none of these questions that have already been sent in. Phone call comes in on one of them. I forget the goddamn question. But nonetheless, man, it's Q&A time here on the Steve Austin Show. I got some talent coming in this coming week. I'm looking forward to talking to them. I'm looking forward to raising some hell and drinking some beer with a couple of these cats. So stay tuned. I'll have an announcement of names. I will tell at that time, because I don't like to drop names because somebody has to drop out because of a scheduling problem. Anyway, before I get to my Q&As, let me tell you about Alpha Brain from Onnit. Alpha Brain is a safe and natural supplement that helps support memory, focus, and cognitive function. I need that shit. Sound too good to be true? Well, the Boston Center for Memory found otherwise when it conducted a double-blind study showing its effectiveness. Alpha Brain has been the secret weapon of champion athletes and business professionals for years, and now it's available for you to try for free by going to onnit.com/Steve. All you have to do is pay $4.99 for shipping, and they'll send you a 30-count bottle of Alpha Brain right away. This is the same 30-count bottle of Alpha Brain that sells on onnit.com for $34.95, and through this special offer, you can get it just by paying $4.99 for shipping. It's gluten-free, caffeine-free, made of earth-grown ingredients, and most importantly, it works. Onnit is only able to offer a limited number of these free bottles per day, so go get your free bottle of Alpha Brain now by going to onnit.com/Steve. That's onnit.com/Steve to get your free bottle of Alpha Brain now.
Hey, it's Jay Moore, and it is time, finally, for America's Lakers podcast. That's right, I'm going to be hosting America's Lakers podcast. My man Aaron Larsoul, an analytical genius, he's going to bring to the table what I can't every Wednesday. America's Lakers podcast exclusively at PodcastOne.com, the PodcastOne.com app, which I highly recommend. You can rate and review this podcast on all Apple products. And guess what we're not going to do? We're not going to bathe in the gossip and the gratuitous negativity that's been swallowing Los Angeles whole lately. Who did what? Who snitched? Who said what? How about truth? How about facts? How about statistics? How about rotations? What's Luke Walton thinking? Who's underperforming? Who's overachieving? Who's rewarded? Who's coming? Who's going? And what are we going to do with all the delightful, delicious cap space? America's Lakers podcast with me, Jay Moore, and my man, my brother, Aaron Larsoul, every Wednesday, PodcastOne.com.
This is Steve Austin Unleashed.
All right, everybody, here we are on the podcast. I'm over here sitting on my ass at 317 Gimmick Street. And the green room, as I call it. I got a couch in here, got a television on the wall. I got a big-ass buck, whitetail buck that I shot about 4 or 5 years ago on the Broken Skull Ranch. Deer scores 168 gross at about 40 inches of mass. He's a 4x6. God damn, you talk about a hell of a deer. Anyway, so I'm sitting here in my green room. I got another damn deer head beside me. I just picked this one up on Thanksgiving Day from Ted Fowler 361 down there in Rockport, Texas. This was probably the biggest buck that was ever shot on my ranch in Texas. It was actually shot by mistake. Dude that shot it wasn't supposed to shoot it. And it had a couple of broke tines on it. And Ted Fowler had a couple of tines repaired for me based on the pictures that we had on the deer. And I tell you what, when this deer was taken, it was a 5x5 with a drop tine off of the right main beam, or off the G2 rather. And that deer busted up with no dog catchers, nothing, scored 160 even. With the repairs made, according to the photographs, an exact replica, I'm guessing this deer is going to go 173, maybe 175. Main beams are 25 and 25.5 inches long, which is starting to get out there for a whitetail. I believe the deer is 23 inches inside, 5.5 inch dog catchers. Just an unbelievable deer. Just got finished picking this thing up, and I was out there talking to Ted at Thanksgiving, and he says, "Hey, man, I got something for you." And this was down when I was down there in South Texas, and Ted came to our Thanksgiving there in Victoria. And he says, "Man, I got your deer head for you, or your skull and your horns," because I wasn't going to mount the thing because it was all busted up and it was an accidental deer. And I said, "Man," I wasn't even going to ask you about that deer because I knew when you dropped it off to the guy for repairs, after all that shit that happened with Hurricane Harvey, I think the dude's whole place got blown away. And probably pretty much lost his business. And I knew a lot of the horns and heads and all the other stuff that he was working on probably got scattered. And I wasn't even going to bring the subject up to Ted because, I figured my horns were gone and, I wanted them back. But, hey, man, when a storm happens of that magnitude, it is what it is. And so I wasn't going to say anything. And I said, "God damn it, man." I said, "He still has that set of horns?" He goes, "Yeah." He says he brought it over to me the other day. Out of all the things that he lost, this was one of the heads or the horns that he was able to still find. I guess it was still in his shop or his garage or laying somewhere on the ground of his property. And he found it, and he'd fixed the tines that were broken. And Ted handed off this deer to me the other day, and God damn, you talk about a sumbitch. The deer was 6.5 years old. I was going to let him go another year. Set a dude in the stand. I told him, said, "Dude, you're trying to shoot a 4x4 or a 4x5. That's an 8-point or a 9-point, because those are the cull bucks that I was wanting, some of my people that came out there to hunt to shoot. We're not shooting 5x5s. We're not shooting 6x6s. We're not shooting trophy deer. We're shooting culls." Why is an 8-point deer or a 9-point deer a cull? Well, just because they don't have as many points, you're not going to get as great of a score. You can have some great trophy type 8 and 9 points, but you don't typically let them grow just because they're an inferior deer to your 10s, your 12s, your 11s, and stuff like that. Anyway, Ted handed me that damn pile of horns, and I just held that thing in my hand, and out of all the ranch, the entire time that I owned that place, this is the biggest deer that was ever shot, again, going about 175. Now, Ted and I were riding down the east fence line one time on a Kawasaki mule the year I sold the ranch, the last year we hunted it, and son of a bitch, man, right there on the east fence line, we looked to the left, and there was a buck standing in there that over 10 years of ownership of that place, we'd never seen that deer, and the deer was kind of like a non-typical. He had shit everywhere. You could see he had about like a 10-point mainframe or 5x5, and then he just had shit going up. He had multiple dog catchers, heavy, trash. I said that deer would probably go towards the 190s, and I put a pile of rocks there on the side of the road right there on the east fence line where I saw that deer, and Ted and I never saw that deer again. And other than that deer, probably, I don't know if I've ever seen a bigger deer on the ranch. There might have been a couple that were long distance. There was a deer out there we called Don Julio. He was a big 10-point. He was really, really wide. I don't think he was scored that great, but he was just such an impressive animal because of how wide he was. We watched that deer forever. I was trying to shoot that deer before I sold the ranch. He was 7.5 years old. It was time for him to go. Never saw him, never was able to get a shot at him. And then we saw a monster 12-point down there on the southwest corner. Shorter tines, but just a great deer. He probably needs to go this year. That one big deer we saw with the double G1s ends up being, well, let me see, if he had 2 G1s, I guess that deer had 14 points. Straight up, a 7x7, that ain't very common. And that deer was... He'll be 5.5 or 6. That deer will be 6.5 this year, and I think that deer is going to go 190s. He probably was 180s last year. A phenomenal deer, and you don't see too many deer out there with 2 G1s on each side. But anyway, thanks to Ted Fowler for getting my deer head to me, man. Like I told you guys, when I went down there to Edna, Texas, and went to Thanksgiving at my sister's place in Victoria, Texas, the fact that Ted Fowler showed up, it was just awesome to see him again. Normally, we're down there at the ranch hunting at this time of the year, and that ain't happening because I don't own the ranch anymore, so I'm still kind of in a transition. Looking forward to taking a trip over to Reno to see my brother-in-law this weekend. And I've got a lot of people coming this week to do a lot of podcasts. I'm pretty slammed, so I've got some good guests for you coming up. I'm not going to drop any names because if they don't show up, then my ass is in a slammer again. So anyway, enough talking about the deer. I'm just happy to have this skull sitting beside me as my last memory of the Broken Skull Ranch and the biggest deer that was ever taken on the property. Although it was done by accident, I got him back. And I can't remember where Ted Fowler had him repair that over there in Rockport, but you did an awesome job, and I appreciate the work. And I'm going to send you some stuff down there because the guy refused to charge me for the repair, and he did great work on both of the G1s and then on the left G3. Also had to make a good repair on, and there might have been one more repair on it, but I can't see it. That's how good a job he did. But anyway, hey, man, I told you guys my truck almost got stolen a couple of weeks ago. And, they called me back, hey, man, we got your truck running, but there's one more problem. When they were trying to shift those gears, they destroyed the cable that leads to the transmission, so that's going to be about another $600. I think I'm probably up to around $2,200 in repairs. I got a voicemail from the Chevrolet dealership where my truck's at. It is completed. I just need to get my ass down there and pick it up, and I'm a little bit hesitant to just go pick it up and put it on the curb because I'm just afraid that motherfucker, whoever they are, whoever it was, going to try to steal that son of a bitch again. And I bought a club for the steering wheel. I sent a picture on my Instagram account, Steve Austin BSR. And as soon as I put out that picture of that club, the traditional kind that goes on the steering wheel, everybody started sending in comments. They said, dude, you brought the wrong kind of club. They'll just cut your steering wheel off in 10 seconds and take that thing, throw it off, and drive your truck away. You should have got the one that hooks onto the steering column and the brake pedal or the gas pedal, whatever it is. God damn, that's the first club I've ever bought in my life. And I'm sure just as a visual deterrent, at least it's got to make them think twice. Well, plus I'm going to put an ignition cutoff switch on the motherfucker anyway. So if the person that tried to steal my truck listens to the podcast, it's going to have an ignition cutoff switch on it, so you ain't going to be able to steal it anyway unless you put the motherfucker on a trailer and then tow it off like that, you sorry motherfucker. It's going to cost me about $2,200. I'll probably go pick up my pickup truck tomorrow if you want to know where it is. It's a 316 Gimmick Street. I may be behind the bushes waiting on you, and I might beat you in the head with that goddamn club if I see you try to steal my fucking pickup truck. Cocksucker. Hey, here's a email from a guy named Barry from the mean streets of Flint, Michigan. Turns out this dude had a interesting story. Different type of job than what I just tried to explain. He says, hey, Steve, I heard you talking on your podcast about your truck getting broken, too. Here's a funny ending story for you while you read emails. Last week, I got up for work at 5:20 a.m. sharp. I've been sick, so I said, screw it, and remote started my car, which is a 2009 GMC Acadia, which is their family car, to warm up. And right after I remote started it, I heard the alarm going off. I'm thinking, what the hell? I get dressed and fly out the door to find my passenger door cracked open and my glove box hanging down. Didn't see anyone, but I did find a busted-ass cell phone laying in the yard. Not mine or anyone in my house, so I believe I have the bastard cell phone. He sent me a picture of it, who was all in my shit. I don't keep anything in our car, so karma just bit them right in the ass. My car is fine. I must have left it unlocked that night, and they were going through my glove box, and I just happened to remote start it at that time and lock them in. They opened the door to get the hell out and set the alarm off, and in a panic dropped their phone. The phone is still on, so I've been leaving block number voicemails of stay out of my shit and get a damn job voicemails. Anyway, I hope everything works for you and your truck. Barry, mean streets of Flint, Michigan. I love it, man. Caught the son bitch trying to rifle through your shit. You didn't lock your door. You remote started your car. surprise them. I guarantee you. I guarantee they should have got damn brick when they heard that car start and felt it start. And they were out there just going through your shit thinking they was just going to get away with everything. And all of a sudden they get locked in. Holy shit. And in a panic, leave their cell phone behind, and now you got it. Hey, so you motherfuckers that tried to steal Barry's GMC Acadia, which is their family car, he bought that family car so he could get his ass to work and drive his family around. He didn't buy the motherfucker for you to go through his glove compartment and steal all his shit out and possibly steal his Acadia and drive around the mean streets of Flint, Michigan. No, motherfucker, he got a job. He goes to work every single day, then he clocks out, then he goes home to his family. So when he wants to go get into his GMC Acadia, go buy his groceries, take his family somewhere, go Christmas shopping, Black Friday shopping, whatever he wants to do, the car's out there on the curb because it belongs to him, not you, you stupid low-life son of a bitch. Fuck. Hey, Barry. Appreciate the email. I'm glad you're leaving the voicemails that you're leaving on this cocksucker. It was funny. I think I mentioned this on the podcast the other day. The day after my truck was stolen, or 2 days after it was stolen when I got back, I had this business card, and they always do this to my cars. They stick them right there underneath that little window jamb on your driver's side window. We buy junk cars. I said, well, hey, maybe this motherfucker knows a little something about whoever stole my car. We buy junk cars. So I blocked the number on my phone, and there's 2 numbers on that damn business card, and I call them both a couple of times. Here's the thing. If you're leaving out those business cards and it says we buy junk cars, why would you not accept a call from a blocked number? Hey, man, if you're in the business trying to buy junk cars, you would take all those calls. No, but the motherfuckers kayfabe me. Since I blocked my number, they're trying to track you down by getting your number. Since I blocked my number, the sumbitches didn't take my phone call. I didn't leave a voice message. Can't prove that it was them. I might have already talked about this on the other podcast, but since Barry sent me this email, it gets me fired up. I'm heading down to the Chevrolet dealership, picking up my shit tomorrow. I guarantee you I'll be waiting there in a bush to club a motherfucker. You try to steal my shit. End of story. Bottom line, let's move on to another question. Man, here's a question I get. People ask me all the time, hey, Steve, how are your knees present day? You have to do a lot of hiking, walking, and chasing bad guys on the mean streets of Los Angeles. How are the knees holding up? Brian Parsons from Newfoundland, Canada. Goddamn, I remember wrestling in Newfoundland, Canada, over there in Nova Scotia. Man, my knees are fine. Had the ACL, PCL put in, 2 years ago? Knees feel good. The only time my knees start hurting is if I've been standing on hard pavement for hours and hours at a time, but just walking, hiking, chasing bad guys on the mean streets of Los Angeles, my knees are fine. Feel good, full range. Now, I'm still missing a PCL in my right knee, but that doesn't really cause me any issues whatsoever. The knees are good. Everything's good. I'm able to squat, do everything that I need to do. They're not an issue. My back's not an issue. My neck's not an issue. While I'm on the subject of how I'm doing, goddamn, both the rotator cuff surgeries healed up just fine. Range of motion is good. I'm not quite as strong as I used to be on overhead presses, but, that's partially because I'm taking it pretty conservative with what I'm trying to do with my shoulder workouts. I'm not going quite as heavy on side dumbbell laterals, stuff like that. But, right arm doesn't straighten out, the tricep reattachment, all that calcium in that joint. There's 0 neck pain. My nerves are good ever since I had that thing cleaned out and fused all those years ago, back in 2000. So, dude, I don't have nothing to complain about. People always ask me, said, man, goddamn, you got to be feeling like shit all them years you did that. Because a lot of the guys that I talk to, I'll ask them how they're feeling. A lot of them do feel like shit. And I tell people, hey, man, on a 1 to 10, a 10 being the worst pain, a 1 being little pain, most of the time I'm at a 0 to a 1. And every now and then if something just aches, because it does, a 2.5. So, man, I feel good. I'm not living on pain pills. I don't take pain pills. I don't really have any need for them. So every now and then, if I can't think of a name right off the bat, I'll say, hey, man, there's too many years of getting head-to-head with steel chairs. But that's pretty much just a gag or a joke, because I do believe I have a CTE question coming up here But I've always had just kind of a shitty memory to begin with. That's why I don't like trying to memorize anything. So let's get on to the next question, dude. I'm feeling good and working out and still pounding the iron. All right, here's a wrestling question. I love answering these wrestling questions. Dear Mr. Austin, I'm a big fan of the podcast. I've been following your career since WCW. You're a legend in your profession. You often talk about pandering to the crowd. Can you please explain to your listeners what this means, why it's not deemed as a good thing to do, and do you have any stories about other wrestlers who do or have done this to put you off? Kind regards, Dino from London. Dino, it's pandering to a crowd is kind of like doing something and then looking to the crowd and asking them for their approval, or just looking to them and trying to get them to cheer during your match, or overtly trying to get them to boo you during your match by just playing to them too much. If you watch, some of the great matches, you want to work the crowd at some level of entertainment, but you want to work the crowd at the first level with respect to the task at hand, and that's put on a wrestling match, and you want them to be engaged in that wrestling match. And this wrestling match is basically, you're simulating a fight, but it's a wrestling match, so it's not necessarily a fight. You throw the punches, and that you're really breaking the rules, and obviously the heels do that, and the baby faces do it in retaliation, because you have to, keep up with the heel at some point, and Katie bar the door. It comes time to throw the punch. But pandering to the crowd is just trying to egg them on and elicit a response. Keep your work within the ring. You're trying to work them through the actions of the story that you're telling in the ring. You can acknowledge, you can look, you can let them in, but you don't beg them. Let me stop beating a dead horse and elaborating too much. You can work them to a small degree if you're looking at them, or if you're letting them into the match. But to pander to them is to beg them to cheer. And you see that happen when, from a lot of people, whether you're male or female, if you're not really over that much. Cats that are over are never pandering to the crowd. Guys and gals that are smart are not pandering to the crowd. You can engage that crowd. You can work that crowd. You can acknowledge that crowd in such a fashion that you're not begging them for their response. That's what I mean by pandering. As far as me just saying anybody specifically, I'm not going to mention any names, but it's not even a fine line. It's a big line. Don't beg the audience to be involved in your match. That's what I'm trying to say. To a degree, though, yes, it's entertainment. If you can organically work those people to be a part of your match, and that's not getting them to say this is awesome, that's just establishing a rapport or a relationship with them, and you can build upon that, and they become a part of your match organically, that's a whole different story. That's not pandering. They feel and love and are a part of your act at that point. That being said, here's that CTE question I was talking about. Says, hey man, swig a beer. After a career of taking steel chairs to the head and seeing a lot of these reports starting to come out of all these football players, are you concerned with that CTE stuff? After the neck injuries, are there certain workouts that you avoid, overhead lifts or military press? Also, from a workout point of view, would you recommend treating core or abs as any other muscle group, and that you should work that area once a week if I'm doing one muscle group a day? Big fan, love the podcast. Sam from Chicago. Hey, Sam, let's talk about that CTE. Man, I'm not worried about it at all. I took a couple of chair shots back in the day, got dropped on my head that one time, and I think I was concussed at that point. I think it'd be a fair thing to say at that point. But I cannot honestly say that I received a bunch of concussions from the business of pro wrestling. Man, I had a physical bump style. Bump and feed was kind of my method of operation. But just hitting that mat, you're taught to tuck your chin. You're taught to slap that mat. You land with a flat back in most cases, if you can. Every now and then you're going to have a shitty landing, of course. I just never understood. And, I'd like to talk with someone on the podcast that just suffered from a shit pile of concussions that wasn't caused by chair shots, because the business in and of itself, to me, as physical as it is, and it's a motherfucker. You're out there working. You're trying to protect each other, but it ain't ballet, man. Shit happens out there. And, there are certainly occasions of concussions. But, man, to me, if you just kept getting concussions, you were doing something wrong. One of the big debates that people always used to have was, hey, man, do I put my hands up on a chair shot or do I just take it and prove that I'm a tough guy? Oh, man, put your goddamn hands up. You're just trying to block part of the blow, and it's a reactionary thing. If someone's going to hit you with something, you react by putting your hands up. If you don't, you just say, okay, I see that chair coming. I'm just going to sit here and take it like a dumb motherfucker. Well, and I'm not calling any of the guys that did that dumb. That was their style, getting a little carried away. But chair shots weren't a big factor for me. I took my share of them. I certainly gave out my share of them. If you're working on a guy with a chair, you want to hit him with that flat edge. You want to hit him with that chair. You want to pull it at the last second at the same time, swinging through. It is an art form in and of itself. And, on a back shot, or on a shoulder shot, or a leg shot, then you can carry through with it and lay that shit in so it cracks. But on them skull shots, man, that's an art. And that guy taking that thing is trusting you to take care of his ass, or his head in this case. So I'm not concerned about the CTE things as it pertains to me. I am speaking only for me and nobody else, and that's the bottom line. Hey, man, as far as the neck injuries, there's nothing that I'm avoiding. I don't use a neck strap anymore or a four-way neck machine because I don't have access to one. If I did, I would. I was a candidate back in 2000 when I got fused up at the C3-4 level. The doctor, Lloyd Youngblood, wanted to fuse 2 other levels as well, but felt that if he fused up 3 levels, that was going to be the end of my wrestling career. So he took a conservative approach, and I'm glad he did. So, man, my range of motion is good. It's probably not full, but it's not as bad as many people that I've seen with neck fusions or double fusions. I'm not really avoiding anything other than, I'm not doing any kind of neck bridges. I never have. I know Kurt Angle, coming from his military background, did a lot of neck bridges and stuff like that. That's part of that game. And part of their training. But, man, other than that, I'm good. My overhead lifts I'm still doing them. I'm not doing them as heavy. And lastly, to answer your question about the core, I recently just kind of started training core a few months ago. And no, I don't treat it like any other muscle group. I think that you can train core 5 days a week. Other people might say 7. Other people might say 3. I believe that you should train core 5 days a week in some way, shape, or fashion. And the way I break this down for me is on one day I'll focus on, abdominal exercises, crunches, planks, stuff like that. I'll do abs one day, then I'll do like serratus stuff and oblique stuff. I alternate between doing stuff in the front to stuff on the sides, and that's how I do my core training. Hey, man, that's from Sam in Chicago. Sam, I appreciate the question that you sent in. God damn it, here's a question that really pisses me off. This comes from Steve Short in Dallas, Texas. He says, hey, Steve, I have a coworker that doesn't know how to shut the fuck every time I try to listen to your podcast. The motherfucker talks over you. Even when I turn it up, he just won't take the hint. His name is Jesse. Could you please cut a promo on him in hopes that I can listen to your podcast in peace? Hey, Jesse, you stupid motherfucker. When Steve Short is trying to listen to the Steve Austin Show or the Steve Austin Show Unleashed, your ass needs to be on the mute button. Don't say a goddamn word. If he's engaged in my podcast, it means he wants to listen to me, not you. So get your ass up and down wherever you're supposed to be, doing the work that you're supposed to do. He says co-worker. He didn't say what the fuck you guys do. So since you're a co-worker, when he's doing his work, listen to my podcast, shut the fuck up, leave him alone, go do your job. That's what you're paying you for, not to hassle him. They're trying to pay you to go do your goddamn work. So go do work and leave Steve Short alone. And that's the bottom line, because I said so. Reminds me of my freight days down in Dallas, Texas, working for Watkins Motor Lines, driving a forklift, pushing one of them carts, loading and unloading trucks. This is back before I got into the business of pro wrestling. I remember I was talking to my defensive line coach at North Texas State University. He had ties into Watkins Motor Lines, and, we wasn't making no money at North Texas State University. I know some of them colleges are handing out cars and payoffs and giving money for autographs and shit like that. At North Texas, your ass had to work. And Coach Adams, I think he's no longer with us, Coach Adams would get us on at Watkins Motor Lines. They called us casuals because we didn't work full time. Casual meant you could go work in after you checked with the boss, certain hours, weekends, and stuff like that. You weren't necessarily 9 to 5 or on a 40-hour work week. You went when you could. And, man, I tell you what, I started working out there, working as a casual. And then, after my 5th year of college, my scholarship had ran out. I paid for 1 semester by myself. And I told the guys over at Watkins, I said, hey, man, I'd like to start working full time. And so that's when I started working full time at Watkins Motor Lines, stopped doing the casual thing. And that's what I did for a couple of years before I went down to Sportatorium. And me and my buddy Robert Webb. And I said, hey, man, this is what I'm going to do right here. So, hey, man, I know the feeling, dude. When you're trying to work, it's time to work. I enjoyed working down there at Watkins Motor Lines, driving that forklift. Goddamn, I could perform surgery with that sumbitch. And yes, I could pick up a quarter using those forks. Those of you who drive forklifts know what I'm talking about. Here's a question. Comes from Harry. He said, how's the hunt going for BSR 2.0? Harry in Youngstown, Ohio. Harry, I've been searching ever since we kind of regained our composure from selling the Broken Skull Ranch. Looked all over, still looking. Started looking in the hill country of Texas. Kind of started looking a little bit, in that San Antonio region, just, it's considered hill country. So that's not so far deep into the South Texas region. And didn't really find anything. I mean, there's some great property out there. I just didn't find anything that was, going to really make it that much easier to get to. Then I started looking in the West Texas area around El Paso, Van Horn, some of that area, Odessa, Permian, Odessa, Midlands area. And, some other areas closer to Dallas and, Waxahachie. It's just really not close enough to really make a difference. And then I considered New Mexico. I didn't really consider Arizona. It's just a different kind of country than I wanted to be in. And then I've been looking up Nevada. So I've been tramping around Nevada. I've been going out there with my brother-in-law. I hunted about 80 miles north of Winnemucca. Winnemucca's kind of far out from the middle of nowhere as far as, a major airport and stuff like that I would need. So, man, I'm still looking. I'm looking in Nevada. Someone asked me on another email what I'm looking for. And it's a funny thing when you're trying to look for land in Nevada, because most of Nevada, about 90% of that land is public land. It's kind of senseless to buy a big tract over there because so much is public. For instance, down in Texas, my ranch, which almost all of Texas, or a big part of Texas, is privately owned. So my ranch, the Broken Skull Ranch, was 2,100 acres. And, man, that's badass. You got a whole compound that's 2,000 acres big that no one can get on. Okay, if you go out to Nevada and 90% of that state is public land, if you have 2,000 acres, well, good for you. But, man, what if you just owned like a 40 to 100 acre compound and you didn't have to maintain the rest of that 2,000? I mean, because it's going to be part of the public land. You have your little buffer that's around you, and then you don't have to maintain the rest of it, and you can just enjoy it. So that's the thing about Nevada, and that's taking some getting used to, which I'm cool with that. So basically, you have the whole state of Nevada to work with as your backyard, front yard, your pasture. Just load up on your trailer, and basically you could trailer within wherever you live within 5 or 10 minutes, be on public land that you can ride your shit around. And they're not just throwing bullets everywhere. They've got their different units, and they have their different laws and rules and stuff like that, which I'm still finding out about. But the search is going good. I've dialed in a couple places that I've been taking a couple trips back and forth to, and we'll see how it goes. But I missed the Broken Skull Ranch. But as I said, I think on the last podcast, I'll tell you what, man, this past trip, driving that 22-foot RV all the way down to Texas from Los Angeles, staying in that camper for 2.5 days, and then taking the 2-day trip back to Los Angeles, really hammered home the point that it's just too far to get down there to maintain something. When we drove to my mom and dad's house, it was 1,508 miles. We did that first trip in 2.5 days, and then on the trip back, we made it in 2 days. And I tell you what, man, when you just pull over, or just, for instance, I'll break it down to you like this. When I go up to Nevada, I go about 400 miles, and I cross over to the state line, and my brother-in-law's house is another 50. So that's 450 miles over to Sparks, Nevada. We got in that camper the other day. We left at 5:20 a.m., and goddamn, we wanted to leave at 5 sharp. And think, what's the difference between 20 minutes and Los Angeles? A shit pile. We got crushed in traffic. We drove, out of the L.A. city limits, finally got about 100 miles out, damn near in Palm Desert before the traffic kind of let off. And, man, I was hauling ass in that fucking RV. So, finally, by the time we got to Phoenix, which is right at 400 miles from Marina del Rey, well, by that time, I would have already damn near been at my brother-in-law's house. And at 400 miles, that meant I had 1,108 more miles on the back end of that trip to get to goddamn Texas, down to my mom and dad's place in Edna. So, son of a bitch, it's interesting, and the process continues. Let me get on to the next question here, man. But the hunt for the BSR 2.0 is live and in living color, and it's ongoing right now. Let's take a quick pause for the calls and give a big ups to a sponsor who makes this podcast possible, and that's TrueCar. When you're looking to buy a new car, you want to feel comfortable you're getting a fair price. With TrueCar, you can get information that empowers you with pricing context that lets you see what other people in your area pay for the car you want. It's pricing you'll see before going to a dealership so you can feel confident when you show up. And with TrueCar, you can connect with a local certified dealer of your choosing. When you're ready to buy a new car, visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience. Some features are not available in all states.
Hey everybody, it's Chad Prather here, the guy that's unapologetically Southern on YouTube. Join me every Thursday for the Chad Prather Show exclusively here on PodcastOne. I'm bringing armchair philosophy and observational humor to what's going on in the world. As guests help me sort it all out. Nothing is off limits on the Chad Prather Show. Again, every Thursday, it's new episodes of the Chad Prather Show right here on PodcastOne. Download and listen to new episodes exclusively on PodcastOne.com, the new PodcastOne app, or subscribe on Apple Podcasts.
This is Steve Austin Unleashed.
Man, here's a good question. Hey, Steve, one time on a podcast, Mick Foley told a story where him and Owen Hart were fighting with a bag of popcorn, and Mick Foley started to do snow angels in the popcorn, and apparently you was trying not to laugh. What's your memories of this match? It was a hilarious story. Reese Hayes from the UK. God damn it. There was a time... It was right after I'd hurt my neck, and I couldn't be in the ring, so, they still wanted me to be on the card to help draw the house. So I would kind of be like Mick's manager or Mick's second, for lack of a better term. And the towns weren't really good. I mean, the houses weren't really good. And Mick and Owen would set out through the course of a match. They were probably working about 15 minutes. And they had all these ribs in place that I didn't know was going to happen. And just stuff that they knew that they were going to try to bust me and make me start laughing out there. And they did on many, many occasions. One of their tricks was to go to the concession stand and get a big-ass clear bag of popped popcorn. If you can imagine, like a trash can bag that would go in your trash can, one of those biggie-sized ones, and one or the other one, whether it's Mick or Owen, would roll out underneath the ring, and all of a sudden they'd pull out that bag of popcorn and start beating the other guy inside the ring with popcorn. You can imagine getting beat with a bag of popcorn doesn't hurt worth a shit. The visual of it. And then all of a sudden the popcorn bag, the big bag would bust, and there'd be shit everywhere all over the ring. And whether it was Mick or whether it was Owen, all of a sudden they'd just be in a cell mode on the flat back, making snowmen in the damn ring. And I was laughing so goddamn hard one of the things about having no hair, being bald-headed, is, anytime you could get one of the guys with long hair to pop or to break character like an Undertaker, only one time did I ever see him do it. He could throw his hair down, and because his hair is so long, you can't see that the guy's laughing his ass off. Well, with me, you can't see that because I ain't got no hair to do that. So I'm basically got my head down on the apron, and you can see that I'm laughing because my rib cage and my drum are going in and out so fast. And another thing they used to do, they would get a big container of the drink lids, just the plastic lids that you put on top of those wax cups that you used to get back in the day. And Mick would break out a bag of those, and Owen would be on his knees begging for mercy. And Mick was working the crowd. He wasn't pandering to the crowd. He was working the crowd. You want me to pour these on him? And the crowd would go, yeah. And so Mick would dump out the plastic lids on Owen, and Owen would sell the shit out of the plastic lids like he was just being covered with acid. And it was so absolutely ludicrous that it just busted me up every time. So, yeah, man, it was unbelievable watching those guys. And they were pulling the rib on me, and they succeeded. Hey, man, here's another question from Reese over there in the UK. He says, hey, Steve, you was talking about the longevity of Ric Flair. I was wondering what was your thoughts of your childhood hero still wrestling after you retired. Just crazy to think that was possible. And he's talking about Ric Flair, his longevity. I thought it was awesome, man. I mean, Rick was, and he still is, he's my favorite pro wrestler, and he's the best wrestler that ever wrestled in the history of the business. That guy could still go. I think when he had that match in WrestleMania 24, was that 24 with Rick, or was that Taker? Hell, he was 50 then, or 50-something, and to have that kind of match, I can only imagine trying to get back in the ring and do what that guy did for as long as he did. Man, it's just him loving the business. It's a thing where, Rick was put on planet Earth to be a pro wrestler. That's what he did. That's who he was. Every now and then you think, man, why are these guys still doing that? And, it took me a while to understand. It's like, they still love it. That's what they still want to do. Yeah, they're a little past prime, post-prime for sure, but that's still what they love to do. And they're, a couple of them still pretty damn good at it. So it was cool, man. Whatever Ric Flair decided to do, he was going to do. And as far as which retirement moment made you the most saddest, man, I don't know about anybody's retirement that made me the most sad. When I'd ride off in the sunset, it wasn't the happiest day of my life, but I'm not going to sit there and piss and moan about it. But, yeah, man, watching Ric Flair's career was, like I sent him a text a couple of weeks ago, man. That guy was such a big part of my life growing up, from when I was a kid to when I got a chance to actually meet him, work with him, think that I was going to take his place, or I was kind of the next Ric Flair at one time. Shit, ain't nobody ever going to be the next Ric Flair. And then to watch him go through, all the matches that he had, man, that guy was a huge impact on my life, and, I got nothing but respect for him. So, sometimes you just love something, you want to keep trying to do with it. That's what Rick did. Here's one from you, from Murray in Carmousie, Scotland. He says, hey, Steve, I'm a lifelong fan, and I've been listening to your podcast since day one. Your podcast keeps me sane while I'm swinging the hammer. My question is, a good while back, you done a podcast about making neon clocks and how to go at it yourself. You said you would maybe take it up as a hobby and try it for yourself. How have you been getting along with that? Have you ever managed to pursue it in amongst your busy schedule? I found a guy that is willing to teach me how to make neon clocks. I just need to be in the right location to learn how to make them. So I got someone that's going to help me out. I'm looking forward to getting over there and taking him up on that. I haven't done it yet, but it's hard enough just to find someone who's going to teach you how to do it and that has time to do it. My buddy over there in Burbank, he's so busy. We hung out that one day and we made that one clock. He's too busy to actually just say, man, we're going to give you neon clock lessons for 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, however long it's going to take you to pick this shit up. He doesn't have that kind of time. So I've got a guy that would train me. I'm just waiting to get the opportunity to do that, and I am going to do that, and I will let you know when I start doing that, because that is one of the things that I still want to do. Hey, Steve, I was listening to your podcast the other day, and you mentioned you need a nickname for Callie. And this is coming from Jesse over in Cincinnati, Ohio. And he gives me a couple of suggestions, or one suggestion. The Princess, Callie, the Princess of 317, actually came up with a nickname from Callie. And we had come up with this nickname a while back. We just never talked about it or end up using it. But Callie has kind of she's a small dog. She's about 9 months old, and she's about 50 pounds. So she's really on the small side for a Labrador Retriever. And I like that because she's a smaller dog. But she kind of has this wide gait, with she's not really wide-chested, but it's almost like she's bow-legged to a degree. So when she runs across the hardwood floors, she kind of makes a loud noise. And so we actually call her Thunderfoot. And so now I guess that's going to be my nickname for her. Callie Thunderfoot Austin. Kind of almost like the old Bill Superfoot Wallace days back in the days of kickboxing or karate or whatever that guy was doing. So we come up with a nickname, and I'm going with our old nickname, which I never really did talk about, Thunderfoot. And that's the bottom line because I said so. Hey, man, here's a question I've been getting asked a lot over the course of time of my career in the squared circle. It comes to a couple of people, but this is Brian from Brockton, Mass. Hey, Steve, sorry if this was answered before, but I was watching your match with Shawn Michaels from King of the Ring in 1997, in which a special needs fan went over the railing. Shawn went to check on him, but it seemed like you were mostly concerned with maintaining the flow of the match. At one point, it seemed like Shawn may have hit you with a stiff punch. Afterwards, you seemed legit pissed that Shawn was tending to the fan instead of focusing on the match. Could you shed light on this? Thanks. Brian from Brockton, Mass. No, man, I vaguely remember that. No, that wasn't a deal of Shawn getting pissed off at me or me being pissed off because he was interrupting the flow of the match. You got to understand, man, that was back in, like I said, 97, so I would have been a hot-ass heel and zero sympathy. But, yeah, I knew the situation at hand, and I knew Shawn was just trying to help the kid out, make sure he was not confused or not startled, and just get him out of harm's way. Man, when something happens like that, you kind of put everything aside in the ring. I mean, you're there to have a wrestling match, but when a shoot situation like that happens, man, as a heel, you just kind of lay back, maintain your character because, I don't want to go over and help him and, lose my heat. By the same token, I want him to help the kid, so he can get the kid out of the way, get him out of harm's way, we can continue our business. If it looked like there was a stiff shot, then we were able to maintain the illusion of what we were trying to do and get you roped into the match and put on a professional wrestling match in which you cared about Shawn the babyface and disliked Stone Cold the heel at that time. So, no, man, there was never any bad intentions towards Shawn or me. We were being professionals out there. He was doing his thing as the knight in shining armor, the caring babyface, and a human being, which he is, and trying to get the kid out of the way. I was doing my thing, and that was the end of the story about that. Man, here's an email from a guy named Philip Chittum in Roanoke, Virginia. He was talking about going through the vault on the WWE Network, and on the GWF section, he found an old USWA show from May 15th, 1990. And I'm working against Chris Adams. Hairspray in the match, and then Percy Pringle, Paul Bear on commentary, alludes to the fact that I'm wearing Chris Adams' boots on top of all the other things that I'm taking advantage of. And they also reference that I still owe Chris money from wrestling school, and Adams is going to take that debut. And they also reference that Stunning Steve still owes Chris money from wrestling school, and Adams is going to take that debt out in pain. The deal was on this, I didn't take Chris's wrestling boots from him. He actually had to give those things to me. Well, he didn't have to give them to me. He could let me just use them. He gave me those boots. We did not plan my debut so soon. I mean, because I would have had to order wrestling boots. Wrestling boots back in the day were made by, I can't remember the name of the company, but they were made in Paris, Texas. Anybody and everybody had their boots made by whatever that guy's name was in Paris, Texas. That's just the way it was. Hell, first of all, you had to call him on the phone. I remember this vividly. Out of all the things I've forgotten. Called a man on the phone, measured the height of the boots that I wanted from the ground, give him my shoe size, how wide my foot was. And man, that dude, Ash, I think it was his name, custom made those boots. So you imagine you start custom making a wrestling boot, they take a little bit of time to make. So by the time Chris figured I was ready for my first match, hell, we had forgot about just ordering basically any ring gear other than I had some tights made. So the reason I was wearing Chris Adams' boots wasn't because I stole them from him, it's because he gave them to me because I simply hadn't ordered mine yet. And on top of that, I was still working at Watkins Motor Lines 40 hours a week, paying for the wrestling school. Hell, I couldn't afford no wrestling boots. And the thing is, the real kicker is, I got a size 13 foot, and I believe Chris was about a 10.5, 11 max. And those motherfuckers were ringing tight. If you can ever find a picture of me wearing my long trunks with those boots on, you can see the front of the where the laces are. It's very gapped out. Like you normally want to lace your shit up real tight so it looks nice and it's snug and it gives you some support. You could damn near see the whole entire tongue because the size of my leg and the smallness of that boot. It was just total discombobulation and highly uncomfortable. But that's all I had. So that was the reason for me wearing Chris Adams boots way back in the day. Here comes a question from, or a comment rather, from Alex. Some of you cats who are over there training in the gyms. Steve, first off, I love the show. I listened to the show with Mike Ryan last week, and as a former gym employee, the gym etiquette segment was both entertaining and saddening. No one cares anymore. As a millennial, I'd agree that my generation is not great at gym etiquette. But I just encountered a gentleman in his 50s using 3 sets of dumbbells at once, lifting one and towel draped over the other. Can you believe it? Tried waiting around and looking for the others and never was offered to work in on the towel-covered weights. That might be the only worse thing than not picking up after yourself. I will just have to put together a home gym to get away from the 3 H's, headaches, hassles, and horseshits of a public gym. Keep up the great audio, Alex. Boy, I'll tell you one thing. If there's one thing that pisses me off, is somebody hogging up the dumbbells or the dude that's on the flat bench, and on the flat bench is beside him, he's got his water bottle and his towel sitting in there. God forbid that you say, hey, man, you mind if I work in on this bench? And he gives you that shitty look like, can't you see my water bottle and my towels on that motherfucker? And like I was talking about with Mike Ryan, trying to superset a chest exercise and a back exercise. All of a sudden, there you got your cable, your lat pulled down. You're trying to get back and forth with your dumbbell presses. Here comes a slew of motherfuckers just jumping in on your shit. You can't do any supersets. So, man, I've created a little gym over here in my backyard here at 317 Gimmick Street, and I got a power rack in my garage. I just lift at the house now just because I'd rather not fuck with anybody. And I kind of miss the Gold's Gym scene a little bit after talking with Mike. There's so much motivation in there. The chicks walking around, the guys walking around, just everybody's in unbelievable shape. So, whether it's guys or girls motivating you, there's so many people in there that are driven to fitness, tight on their diets, putting their workouts in, paying the price, and it's very motivating. But by the same token, sometimes it can be a little bit overwhelming and be a clusterfuck. And the other thing about training in a gym is, man, when people see you, they just want to start talking to you. And these are your buddies. These aren't just strangers. But they just want to start talking to you. And it's like, man, I got 1 hour to be in here. 1 hour. Hour and 15 max. So I need to get my work done and get the fuck out of here. All of a sudden, you start looking around, you start chatting with somebody, and then the next person comes along, you're talking with them, catching up. Hell, by the time you look at it, you're 30 minutes there, you ain't even done shit, but you got to be gone here. So that's just another pain in the ass. And that's one of the things that when you go into the gym, just remember there's not a whole lot of people there, or shouldn't be a whole lot of people there that just got a bunch of time to sit there and just talk and shoot the breeze with you. And don't get me wrong, if you're one of those people, that's fine, because some people just go to the gym to talk and socialize, and if they happen to get a workout in as a byproduct, then that's okay with them. They're happy with that. Whatever floats your boat. If you're paying whatever you're paying for a gym membership, you better go in there and use that iron, use the machines, use the cardio, get your money's worth, put your body through what you're trying to put it through, and get your ass out and make sure you get some results. If not, just spinning your wheels. But if that's what you want to do, more power to you. Hey, man, here's a question. It comes from Blaine. Steve, what was the reason for the hit-and-run angle during the 99 Survivor Series? Were you in need of a break from TV, or did you have an injury? Well, man, yeah, I think 99, I got fused up in 2000, or at the back end of 1999, but I missed all of 2000. Yeah, man, when I got clipped by that car, a lot of people think that was actually me that got hit by that car. They told me about that angle because I needed to take time off to get my neck fused up, levels 3 and 4, cervical. So, man, they come up with the car angle, and, man, I can't get into all the particulars of the angle because I can't really remember it, but what happened was, whoever it was going to drive the car, run me down in the parking lot, and that was going to give me the reason to be gone off TV so I could get patched up, which, pretty major surgery, cleaning up the spinal stenosis, taking the bone spur off my spinal cord, and then, taking a bone out of my hip, fusing it in the 3-4 level, and let all that shit grow together and heal up. It was successful. So that was the reason for me taking getting hit by the car. So I think I remember that the guy, the stunt man that we brought in, he did that in 1 or 2. The phone rang on that question. I think I just finished answering it, and I had to take that call. I owe everybody listening to this podcast a beer. That's probably at least 500 or 600 beers that I owe you people over the course of 4 years. Anyway, I got another question. Comes from Jim. My name is Jim. Big fan of the podcast and the work you did in the ring all those years. My question is, where did you come up with the catchphrase DTA, don't trust anybody? Second question, have you had the chance to get out there and goddamn hunt with the beast, Brock Lesnar? Swig a beer, brother. All right, Jim. When I came up with the catchphrase DTA, that was on the fly. I remember attacking Brian or whatever the deal was, or whatever the interview segment was, and I just said, DTA, brother, don't trust anybody. And it was one of those things, as I was talking, a light went off in my head, and as soon as it did, I just instantaneously shit it out. It was similar in a way to the Austin 316 thing when Doc Hendricks, a.k.a. Michael P.S. Hayes, told me about what Jake the Snake Roberts had said at King of the Ring in 96, and the 316 popped into my head. This was the same thing, man. I didn't think up, hey, man, let me come up with something. Don't trust anybody, DTA. It didn't happen like that. Right as I was cutting that promo, it popped into my head, and it was a shoot, man. I mean, had that put on my vest. In your life, how many people can you really trust? Hopefully there's a couple, but at the end of the day, maybe 1, 2, really? So, DTA, it happened organically, it happened naturally, and it happened in a flash of fucking lightning, and I said it. Did I have a chance yet to goddamn hunt with the beast, Brock Lesnar? I talked with Brock about 6 weeks ago. It might have been a couple weeks ago. But anyway, talking about my mule deer hunt, some stuff like that. We are trying to plan a trip for next year. It seems like every time I'm trying to get on a hunt with Brock Lesnar, we're always talking about next year because this year has already gone by, and we talked about that last year. Brock Lesnar is a good friend of mine. We don't see each other very often, and we don't talk very often because he's on the road doing his thing, and I'm over here in Los Angeles doing my thing. It's just one of those kind of friendships is, when you talk to each other, it is what it is. And, looking forward to getting with him one of these days. As a matter of fact, we were talking about going to over there on his neck of the woods, so maybe somewhere in the Midwest. I sold my place in Texas. I'd been wanting him to come down there to South Texas. What I would like to do, Just between you and me, sitting here with a microphone in my hand, is I've been spending a little bit more time in Nevada. That country has been so intriguing to me because, like I've been talking about, just the 90% public land aspect of it. It's just so handy and easy to ride around wherever you go. Don't get me wrong, I could get out there by myself on my Kawasaki mule and get lost like a motherfucker, but my brother-in-law, Mitch, the guy that heads up Nevada Hunting Services, when we hunted my mule deer, we were in Unit 034, 80 miles out of Winnemucca in Humboldt County. And goddamn, he knows that country, not just that unit. He knows that entire state like the back of his hand. He's been hunting it for 40 years. So, yeah, I'd like to have Brock out there in Nevada. It's handy to me because it's only 400 miles away. I guess Brock, where'd you come from, Minnesota or something like that, or wherever in the country he is. But we're going to do it one of these days. And goddamn, that'd be one of those things where we'd have to do a podcast every single night just talking about pro wrestling. And, well, there's so many things that you can talk about on a podcast, but there's also so many things you can't talk about on a podcast because it's kayfabe. My friendship with Brock Lesnar, is pretty much whatever we say to each other is kayfabe, and that's just the way it is. So anyway, I'm trying to get on a hunt with Brock. Brock's trying to get on a hunt with me, and one of these days, me and my friend will get out there in the woods and don't give a shit if we get anything or not. We'll hunt together and drink whiskey at night and shoot the breeze and laugh our asses off. Hey, man, I got 2 more wrestling questions before I wrap up this podcast. We head to the close. I got a bunch of badass guests coming up, and I'm looking forward to talking to them. I appreciate you guys listening to me do this Q&A. Here's one that says, from Eric in mid-Missouri. Hey, Steve, love enjoying your 2 cans of audio whoop-ass every week. If Stone Cold could have been part of any group or faction from any era, such as the Freebirds, the Four Horsemen, NWO, DX, etc., which would you choose? Or do you feel Stone Cold has to be more of a lone wolf? Thanks for all you've given to the business and the fans. Swig of beer, Broken Skull IPA for the working man's wrestler. Well, you're right, man. Stone Cold was indeed a lone wolf, and that's kind of like almost a shoot because I'm a lone wolf in my actual real life. I like to be by myself, and I like to be around people. I love people, love being in the entertainment business, but I like my alone time and being in the middle of nowhere. With my dogs or my wife and my buggy or just by myself. So I'm a lone wolf in that regards. But man, when you're talking about the Freebirds, man, those guys, when they came to the Sportatorium and when I saw them before they came to the Sportatorium, man, those guys were like rock stars and they were badasses. And Michael P.S. Hayes could talk that trash and Buddy Jack Roberts was tough as nails and holy shit. Terry Bam Bam Gordy, one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time. He was a pro wrestler. Make no mistake about it. Just the way he moved in the ring, it was so safe. The shit looked so good. It was so vicious. That dude was a game changer. He was ahead of his time. It would have been great to be part of the Freebirds had I not been a lone wolf. Okay, so that's how much respect I had for the Freebirds. Just totally respected those guys. And like I said many times, when I was at North Texas State playing football on Friday nights and Saturday mornings when I went to the Sportatorium, I went to watch the Von Erichs fight the Freebirds. And sometimes I was cheering for the Freebirds. Sometimes I was cheering for the Von Erichs. But those guys drew money, and I was a fan. Now, the Four Horsemen. Shit, man, you got to realize when the Four Horsemen came out, what was this, mid-'80s? I would guess I was in college. I might have still been in high school. But those guys, and they're about one generation ahead of me, the Four Horsemen were the shit. Just like the Freebirds were in a different right, but the Four Horsemen, man, the 4 of those guys, maybe just one more body, and their intimidation factor. And, of course, you got, the Nature Boy Ric Flair kind of as the lead guy. But god damn, man. Ole, Arn, Tully, shit. Or they had different incarnations after that, but the Four Horsemen was the be-all, end-all of those fucking factions. And as single workers, awesome. Tag team workers, awesome. Talkers, awesome. Getting the heat, awesome. Those guys could do it all. So, man, the Four Horsemen, to have been a part of those guys, that would have been amazing. Because all the names that you just mentioned are all of my favorite factions that have ever been. NWO, those guys were unbelievable. What a fucking gimmick. When they came up with that gimmick, because I remember I was in WWF at the time, and they went down there and started that shit up, and I was like, holy fuck. I wasn't thinking about how you would compete with it, because I was just watching it, and I was very entrenched in doing what I was trying to do to get over and find my place and turn that Stone Cold character into the motherfucker that it ended up being. I watched that shit that the NWO was doing down there in WCW, and it was edgy, and it was cool, and it was badass, and it was different. And I think each, generation kind of takes from the generation that preceded it, obviously, as an influence. But those guys were real original, and they were over, they were charismatic. They had that larger-than-life persona. They were superstars. They played the part. They looked the part. They were the part. They were anti, it was good shit. It was good shit. It was new school back in the day, because that was my prime, that was their prime. And so it was just good shit. And those guys were over like a motherfucker. And really, and that's with respect to that whole locker room that WCW had back then. They had a lot of great cruiserweight workers. But, the NWO was that show for the most part. Now, don't get me wrong, Diamond Dallas Page, a lot of those goddamn guys were major draws, but the NWO was the shit there. So, badass group, DX. Man, DX right there in the same locker room with me. I mean, Jesus Christ, I don't know how many comebacks those guys fed for me and bumping, flying, and everywhere. But god dang, here was a group that, man, just collectively came together and just turned themselves into superstars. And the edgy stuff, the carte blanche, the free-for-all attitude back in the day where you could push the envelope. They'd have a basic outline, but then those guys would just step over the line and just swagger, confidence, extreme cockiness, rebellious, D-Generation X. I mean, just the name was perfect. The group was perfect. They meshed together. The chemistry was perfect. All of a sudden, you throw China in that mix. It was unbelievable. Those guys, I mean, those guys, I don't think they get credit for drawing a lot of money that they did, because you had, I was on top, Taker was on top, Rock was on top, DX was on top. And shit, there for a while. I mean, shit, how many of them was in DX? A shit pile of them. And if you go back to the core of, Triple H and Shawn, where they were flat out amazing. Everybody else, Billy Gunn, badass Billy Gunn, Road Dogg. Shit, was X-Pac in there for a little bit? But, man, those guys were lights out. They were as hot as anybody was on our roster. And those guys were drawing major money. And they were all over. And they were a big part of the machine. So I can't pick one of them. I can just give you the highlights of strong points in a brief kind of answer of what I thought of all of them, respected all of them, dug all of them, knew that they were all over, and they were all winners. So they were all badass to bring it to the bottom line on that thing. But, yeah, man, each group, I enjoyed something kind of all the same but altogether different about each group, because I thought that, some people may say I got similarities of this group to that group. Man, you all draw from something. But the common denominator is they were over and they were selling tickets. Here's my last question before I wrap this thing up. Hey, Steve, this is some kind of on a personal note about Chris Adams. Hey, Steve, love your show. I became a huge fan of pro wrestling in the mid-'80s. My favorite wrestlers back then were Gentleman Chris Adams and Gino Hernandez. I was even a member of the Chris Adams fan club. I've been watching nothing but world-class championship wrestling on the WWE Network lately. Then in the 90s, I was a huge fan of Stone Cold. So I've always been curious about your start with Chris Adams. I've read over the years that he was a pretty shady character. In your book, it didn't sound like you thought too highly of him. I was surprised to hear you talk about calling him years later to ask his advice when you were in WCW, when you were probably a bigger star at that point than he ever was. He died in 2001, so he got to see you become a megastar. So I guess my question is, when was the last time you remember talking to him? Do you think he was proud of having a part in your success, or maybe jealous of it in a way? Anyway, love the show. Keep up the good work, Troy. Any chance you might have Kevin Von Erich on the show someday? Shit, I'd love to talk to Kevin Von Erich. Let's get back to your questions. There's a couple of them there. No, I wouldn't say Chris Adams was a very charming, charismatic guy. He was a good-looking guy, very smart, probably more street smart than anything, and he was a hustler. Chris Adams worked his ass off, putting on his own shows, working his gimmick, all the success he had with Gino. He was a charismatic wrestler who was definitely over and really good in the ring, really knew how and when to sell. He had that fire that you needed when you're working babyface for those comebacks. And when Chris Adams was talking about kicking your ass, I mean, it was a damn near shoot. He was convincing on the microphone. So, in my book, the only thing that the only problem where I really had with Chris Adams was, one time I was booked on some shows for a promoter named Ed Watts. And Chris called and asked me if I'd do some shots for him. And I said, Chris, I'm already booked. I'm working with Ed. And he kind of held it over me. He kind of said, Steve, well, I am the guy that got you into WCW. I hadn't left for WCW yet, but he was taking credit for it. And I said, Chris, I'm already booked with Ed. And he kind of, was kind of giving me the guilt trip. And so I said, okay, man, I said, let me call Ed and see what I can do about getting out of those shots. And he goes, Steve, I'll pay you double of what Ed was going to pay you. And it wasn't about the money. It was about doing the shots for Chris. So I called Ed Watts up and I explained the situation to him. Hell, I was just happy to be booked. And I didn't want to cancel out on Ed because I'm a man of my word. And so Ed understood the situation. And he said, Steve, go ahead and work for Chris. So I thanked Ed very much for letting me out of my bookings. And I proceeded to work the 2 or 3 shows with Chris Adams over that weekend. Well, I worked the shows, did the best I could, still green as grass, and I noticed that when it came time to get my paycheck, that I got paid the same amount that Ed Watts was going to pay me, and Chris Adams says he was going to pay me double. So I looked at the paycheck. It's a hard thing to do when you're a youngster in the business, and you're trying to work into the money situation and learn the business proceedings and your worth and what the promoter told you, and you ain't got no stroke. You're just trying to get booked, and you're trying to learn the system. So you got to start somewhere. So Chris and I had an agreement. Well, I had an agreement first and foremost with Ed Watts, and he let me out of that so I could work the shots with Chris. So I called Chris up, and I said, hey, Chris, how's it going? He goes, hey, Steve, how's it going? And I said, hey, man, I'm good. I said, I was just noticing on my paycheck that you didn't pay me what you said you was going to pay me. You told me you were going to pay me double of what Ed paid. And he kind of got a smart-ass tone with me. He goes, oh, really, Steve? I said, oh, yeah. I said, you said you were going to pay me double, and you paid me the same as what Ed Watts is going to pay me. He goes, okay, Steve. And he hung up the phone on me. And, man, that's how it started and stopped. And so I couldn't believe that happened. But nonetheless, that Chris was, he was a hustler. He didn't want to pay me what he said he was going to pay me. And, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way at the time. But I let it slide and, went on about my business. And Chris was still my mentor. And years later, when I was in WCW, I was starting to lose my hair. And, back when you're growing up in the business of pro wrestling, you figure your mentor has all the answers to life's questions. So I had that long, stringy-ass blonde hair, and I figured, well, shit, man, I don't know what to do about this. I'm losing my hair. Back in the day, in pro wrestling, everybody had long hair, man. Your hair was your calling card, and I had this pretty-ass blonde hair. I just didn't have a lifetime guarantee on it. So I said, well, I'll call Chris and ask him what to do. He's smart. He'll know what to tell me. So, with all the heat being dissipated by the time I'd gotten there, I called Chris up and I said, hey, Chris, we start shooting the breeze. I said, hey, man, I got a question for you. I said, I'm kind of starting to lose my hair. I said, what do you think I should do? He goes, fuck, Steve, I don't know. So, what was he supposed to say? So anyway, I think that was about the last time I'd ever talked to Chris, was me asking him about my hair. And there wasn't no heat at that time. I enjoyed Chris, man. He taught me a lot about the business of pro wrestling. And even that misunderstanding or whatever it was about that payoff, I had let that go. And that was part of the learning process for me as far as the curve in professional wrestling. And, when he got killed, when he died, and there was no heat there, he had a different side to him. I wouldn't necessarily call him flat out shady. He just had a different side. And, if he was drinking, I guess it wasn't that great. I wasn't around him too much when he was drinking. I'd heard some stories, but I enjoyed the guy. I enjoyed knowing him. He did a good job training me. I would have never won the 1990 Rookie of the Year award if I had not been involved in a high-profile angle with Chris Adams and all the stuff we would do in my first year in the business of professional wrestling. I can say that without a shadow of a doubt. So I'm more grateful than anything, and I had a good time hanging around him. He was a very unique individual, I will say that. And he could work his ass off and was well-schooled and street-smart as far as the business of professional wrestling, and would work his ass off in promoting his cards over there in Trader Village and that Dallas-Fort Worth area, wherever Trader Village is, and all of the shows that he used to put me on. And it was funny because when I was breaking in, he'd always, when I was working with him, he'd pull a rib on me, and he'd put Gentleman Chris Adams, 242 from Stratford-upon-Avon, England, versus Steve Austin from Greenhorn, Texas. Well, obviously, Greenhorn is the greenest guy on a card, or a guy who's not very experienced at that. So he made that town up for me, and I always got a kick out of it, and especially as I look back now after all the years that I've been in the business for him to pull those ribs on me. But I didn't have any hard times with him other than that. And was he jealous of me? Well, I'm sure he would have liked to have had, the level of success that I was able to attain. I caught a lucky break and ran with it, and I was able to get over. But I learned a lot from Chris Adams. So part of me getting over to the level I did was a part of him. So I can't answer that. I'll leave that for anybody else to answer. But I enjoyed knowing him, and he was a good trainer. And I was actually, on a final note, I was actually supposed to be trained by Cowboy Scott Casey, but I couldn't get in touch with Cowboy Scott Casey when it came down to really starting a school and getting serious about the business of pro wrestling. And that's when I saw that commercial on television for the Chris Adams Wrestling School. So had I never seen that commercial, had I started training with Scott Casey and not Chris Adams, I don't know where my career would have gone. I would have never feuded with Chris. I can say that for sure, because I wouldn't have been there. I'd have been in an independent promotion, traveling around some of the local Texas towns rather than being in the WCCW/USWA. So I always figured things were supposed to happen for a reason, and there was a reason that Chris Adams and I were supposed to cross paths. And I believe in somewhat of some kind of destiny or predestiny, or my whole life has led me toward the business of professional wrestling. I truly believe that. And I could have stayed on the freight dock. They wanted to groom me for a management position, take me off the dock and run a terminal. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get in the business of pro wrestling. When I got that scholarship to North Texas, I could have went to University of New Mexico in Albuquerque on a full scholarship. I chose Texas. So Chris Adams and I were supposed to cross paths in our lifetime, and we did. And I'm glad for it. I wish he was still around. At his heart, he was a good man. Hey, man, I'm coming back to close this show.
PodcastOne is your home for the biggest names in pro wrestling. We've got the Animal, Dave Bautista, with Jim Ross on the Ross Report.
I don't want to do a one-off. I want to go and I want to wrestle. I want to be a part of the program, and I love it.
The longest-reigning WWE Divas champion, Nikki Bella, with Lillian Garcia.
There's that excitement, and when you have a great match, you're like, oh my God. That's how you feel when you have a great dance with someone.
Hard-hitting wrestling journalism with Wade Keller.
Find out not just what's happening, but also decoding why it's happening and whether it's good for fans and the bottom line.
And the unfiltered and unpredictable thoughts of Vince Russo.
They dictate to us what is considered big time.
Get all these podcasts and more exclusively on the new PodcastOne app, PodcastOne.com, and on Apple Podcasts.
All right, everybody, give me the go-home cue. It's time to wrap up this podcast and ride off in the sunset. Before I do that, I want to thank you guys for sending in all the questions that I answered. I got some badass guests coming up. I will say no more about that. You will hear them starting next week, coming on Tuesday. Before I wrap this motherfucker up, I got to give you guys a couple of plugs. ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin has all the shit I've been wearing on Broken Skull Challenge. And if you go to ProWrestlingTees.com/Steve Austin, you will see that shit. The best damn IPA on planet Earth is Broken Skull IPA, and that's the bottom line from El Segundo Brewing Company. You can go down to the facility at 140 Main Street in El Segundo and get some right out of the tap. But if you live in California, you can also find it at Whole Foods and Total Wines. And if you ain't in Cali, check InsideTheCellar.com and see if they ship to your state. Hey, folks, you need a pocket knife? Yes, you do. I got one for you. It's either the Cold Steel Broken Skull knife or the new Cold Steel Working Man's knife, and you can get them at my new Amazon store. Amazon has the best prices on both knives. Just go to Amazon.com/shop/Steve Austin. I want to say one more thank you to all the fine sponsors of the Steve Austin Show. That's how I'm able to do this podcast for you twice a week for free. And you can find all my sponsors at PodcastOne.com. Just click on the Killer Deals button at the top of the page and then click on the Steve Austin Show banner. And speaking of Podcast One, the new Podcast One app is now available for download at the App Store or Google Play. There ain't another podcast app like this sumbitch anywhere, and that's because the new Podcast One app is loaded with some cool features that lets you do a lot more than just listen to your favorite shows. You can access behind-the-scenes photos, articles, and connect with other fans of the shows you like. Watch over 1,000 360 virtual reality videos. You can actually watch some of your favorite shows in virtual reality. It's like you're sitting right in a room with them. So get to the App Store, Google Play, and download the new Podcast One app now. Folks, if you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter and I'm on Instagram. Steve Austin, BSR. At Steve Austin, BSR. Folks, until next time, my name is Steve Austin, and I will catch your ass down the road.
Download new episodes of Steve Austin Unleashed every Thursday at PodcastOne.com. That's PodcastOne.com.